But he was starting to feel like he was getting the hang of this. There was a way through to victory. He could feel it. He just had to keep running the path of destinies. With that, the book fluttered back to the beginning, and he fell into it. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Renato knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong, but he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. And also, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lapino had betrayed the rebellion. But could Renato really leave an old friend to the Ravens? Ah, Lapino. Apparently, the Mad Rabbit had sold a Pegasus that he did not exactly own. Lapino always wiggled out of trouble, given time. But he was out of time. Lapino's frantic message said that the Ravens were going to kill him for being a rebel spy. And that he had a clever plan. If the fleet reached him first, they'd string him up for that. Never mind the winged horse. Or so Lapino had told him over the far speaker anyway. Lapino had apparently managed to confuse the judge by arguing that he hadn't actually stolen a winged horse. He'd only sold it. But wait, where was the prison? The village was empty. Had everybody fled the Ravens? Yes, please. Bring out your eyes. The Ravens had taken the town. Renato had seen villages emptied like this. All the people taken away to be sacrificed in the Emperor's secret rituals. Renato hoped the people were just hiding. Renato thought of the Iblis stone and shivered. He had no business messing with ancient, cruel artifacts. What he needed was his friends around him. Clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose. Boy, someone had spent a lot of money for a graduation present. Well, they really needed to redecorate anyway. That could come in handy in a pinch. Ravens were landing everywhere. The advance guard. He'd better get moving. If they got to Lupino first, they'd eat him for breakfast. Or a snack. Ravens weren't picky. If they got hungry, they sometimes forgot to interrogate their prisoners. Even top spies like Lupino. Well, unless he really was a traitor, obviously. Then they'd probably pin a medal on his chest. The road less traveled, thought Renato. How intriguing. Ever wonder why the Imperial Ravens are always hiring? Dirty and bloody, Renato finally reached Lupino. The rabbit was practicing his shuffle. Renato recognized the cards. It was Lupino's favorite deck. Oh, I thought you were in danger. I am. The Ravens are coming. Oh, the prison thing. Right, yeah, we see this guard owed me 53 ducats, so we made a deal. They're very reasonable people, actually, for weasels. Now, I got a brilliant plan to kidnap Zenobia. We capture Zenobia, we find out what she knows, and that's the whole war right there. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. capture the Emperor's greatest general, who also happened to be a deadly sorcerer and, oh, his only daughter? That would be worth it. On the other hand, he could still get to the core of the Sky Ripper, even if he couldn't get the whole thing. It must have great power. To make the Sky Ripper, the transcendent Emperor had wrapped an armature around the eye of a god. Bernardo had already let that armature slip away to save Lapino's life. But even its core, the eye torn from a god, surely they could fashion a great weapon from that. The core of the Sky Ripper? Lapino's excited. That's an actual thing that we could just go and get. You've been busy. He sure had. Bernardo told him all the things he'd been up to. Soon they got to talking about old times, about wages they'd won and lost, and scrapes they'd barely got out of. It was good to be back with his friend. True, the core was capable of terrible, uncontrollable destruction. But this time, he was sure it would work great. It's beautiful here, thought Bernardo. It was nice to be back with his old war buddy. All right, Lapino was a traitor. But still, it was good company. What's behind door number 2? Once, he didn't have anything clever to say, so he died. This one looked familiar. Had he lost this one in a card game? Welcome back, he thought. There was something sour in the air. Like the earth had ruptured over something that had been fermenting for a very long time. Don't look down, he thought. Renato felt wrong all over. He could feel an almost palpable sickness in the air. And if the land could have tumors, they would look like these monstrous crystals. The forest was quieter than it had been. There were insects, but few birds, if you didn't count the ravens. Renato smelled sick animals and dying ones, but no healthy ones. I'm getting a bad feeling about this, Renato thought. Maybe Lupino was right. Maybe they should have kidnapped Zenobia instead of coming here.
I hear you're the dead, silent type.
This couldn't be good for global warming.
The lead raven.
As he held the radiant icosahedron, Renato felt queasy, like dozens of tiny worms were nibbling his insides. It wasn't healthy to be so close to the eye of a god. How could he use it? He could take it to the observatory. The scientists there could tell him how to harness its ancient power. But honestly, Renato ached to get away from it. He brought the core back with him to the Farfarer. But honestly, Renato ached to be rid of it.
Tell you what, said Lupino. I'll take it to the observatory. You attack the Imperial outpost.
The Imperial outpost was a vital communications node. Taking it could shatter the Empire's ability to coordinate. And it would be full of secret plans and maps and maybe even rebel prisoners. It was a good target for a hero like Renato. But what if Lupino lost the core to the Empire? That could be a good thing, couldn't it? Was Renato ready to take that risk? Maybe it was better if he brought the core to the scientists himself.
Trust me, Renato, you won't regret this. I'll treat the core like it was my own baby daughter.
As the Farfarer dived towards the Nexus, Lupino was jumping up and down with excitement. "Stop rabbiting around," Renato said. Lupino just stared at him. The moment the ship landed, Lapino leapt off the ship. As Lapino vanished into the wilds of the Nexus, Ronaldo vaguely remembered Lapino had a baby daughter, didn't he? And he told her mother he was going out to get some Easter eggs, and he'd never come back. But Ronaldo was relieved not to carry the core anymore. He was already feeling better. And who knows, maybe this time Lapino would get it right. And if Ronaldo could take the outpost, he'd have access to all the Empire's communications in the sector, right? Ronaldo felt new powers ready to blossom within him, or something. He hadn't noticed that path before. He'd once met a pirate captain. He used hooks to get around his ship. Oh, what was his name again? Sensed the jewel's power. He had a feeling they were going to be great friends. Renato caught his breath. His joints still hurt, but he couldn't feel the poison in his system anymore. He'd let the armature slip out of his hands to save his friend Lapino. Of course he had to let Lapino take the core. The rebellion needed every man doing his duty. And the rabbit would be no good taking on an Imperial outpost, right? The rebellion had once tried to take the Imperial outpost. The rebel ships were shot down before they could even see it. Maybe a single fox could sneak through their defenses. It would be fun to try out that one. And here was a handy workbench. Renato took the outpost with a song in his heart. Soon, he was stuffing his sack with key messages from and to the fleet. Then the far speaker toad chortled a new message. The observatory had been sacked by ravens. Lapino and all the scientists had been taken to the mountains. Why? Why had he trusted Lapino again? And now the Empire had the core. Renato hailed the rebel base to warn them. But their far speaker didn't quote back. Was the base under attack too? What was going on at the base, but he knew what the ravens would do to Lapino if Renato didn't rescue him fast. Well, actually, he wasn't exactly sure. It kind of depended on whether Lapino was a traitor or not. Renato just couldn't bring himself to believe that. What are old friends for, if not to need rescuing every few days? Renato felt a twinge of doubt. Should he have gone to the base? No. Logically, wherever they'd taken Lapino was probably where they took the core, right? Oh, why couldn't Lapino have just, for once, not got himself captured? Was that too much to ask? He shouldn't be too hard on the rabbit. No, he meant well, and he was insanely brave. You had to admire that. It wasn't his fault. They looked so breakable.
You shall not pass!
There was an engraving. Maximum capacity, 130 people. It was time for a little exploration. they holding Lupino anyway? There was no sign of him or the ravens who'd captured him. Just rocks and snow and the usual scouts. No sign of the Corps either. Was this a wild rabbit chase? Oh, trust Lupino to screw up even getting captured. But what was this rebellion for anyway? Lupino was a useless goof, but he was a friend. If friends didn't matter anymore, what was the point of winning this war? That had gone rather well, actually. Made all these ore chests anyway? Well, you could have quite a business doing that. What were these poles exactly? Parking meters from the time of the lost gods? The rebellion would soon be engaging the Imperial fleet in a desperate battle. All Reynardo had done was save a friend. It didn't feel as good as he'd hoped. At the end of the mountain path, Reynardo came to a clearing. There was a campfire, raven feathers, and... oh, Lupino's lucky deck of cards. Well, that wasn't good. Reynardo hoped Lupino would not try to cheat his captors at cards. Ravens were much better than weasels at counting. and they had a very poor sense of humor. Then, he saw what he had hoped never to see. Fresh scraps of rabbit fur. Ragged and bloody, ravens would eat anything.
By Grabthar's hammer!
Bernardo screamed at the sky.
I will avenge you!
The rebels had assembled their fleet. Ahead, the clouds were dark with Imperial ships. If he could reach the Emperor before the rest of the rebels did, maybe he could settle this without too much bloodshed. He set sail, and the Farfarer shot forward. Poor Lupino had never been a great warrior. The mad rabbit was good for a lark and a laugh. And a pint. The thought of ravens eating him made Bernardo furious. The way they were eating up the land. The way the Emperor was eating up the people with his new, bloodthirsty ways. He would make them all pay. Or I could go that way, he thought. Bernardo wondered if his future self had commissioned these poles. He had given up every objective to save his friend. He had given up the armature, the core, the gem, and even Zenobia. He loved Lupino, he realized. And now the rabbit was gone. A hero looks out for his friends, even when they're gone. He would send Lupino an honor guard of ravens to serve him in the halls of the Valiant. He would avenge him. That he didn't feel more pain. Just a bit dizzy. Whew. There was a sign. Take the goat across first. Finally, he reached the Emperor's ship. And there was Lapino, surrounded by ravens. He was alive. They'd eaten some other rabbit. "I'll save you!" he shouted with joy and flung himself at the ravens. "Oh, you shouldn't have," said Lapino when the last raven was down. Reynardo threw his arms around his best friend. "I had to come. I love you, man. You really, really shouldn't have," said Lapino. And Reynardo felt a rather sharp pain in his back. As he collapsed, Lapino took the dagger out of Reynardo's back and wiped it off on Reynardo's sleeve. "Why, you always have to be the hero. Brave Reynardo, epic Reynardo, super sexy Reynardo, and I'm sick of it." As Reynardo died, all he could think was, "Damn it, fooled again." And he hadn't learned anything new this time. He'd done the same thing twice, yet expected a different outcome.